Today, we're going to be finishing up the Thousand Suns combat patrol that we started not too long ago. And this kit is nearly sorted, but what we do have left is the birdie boys of Tzeentch themselves, the Tzaangors. And these are traditionally AOS kits predominantly. Most of the weapons in there are for AOS models and AOS themes. They can be used in both AOS and 40k, which is great. But if we want to set them up with the 40k weaponry, we need to use these limited sprues of guns and chainswords, which are all in the exact same hands. So you've got your chainswords in your right hand and your bolt pistols or auto pistols in your left hand. And I don't really like that sort of limitation. So while I know that it's not particularly WYSIWYG, I'm not going to be taking this combat patrol into a tournament or Games Workshop HQ or anything. So what I'm going to be doing is swapping out the combination of weapons and using some of the weapons from the 40k upgrade sprue along with some of the weapons from the AOS traditional weapon side, so that we have a lot more options when we're building out the kit. If we take a quick look at these chest and arm pieces of the kits, on the 40k side we can see the arms and chest pieces are separate, while predominantly the Age of Sigmar kits are joined at the breastbone. This would make you think that we can't use these, but with a simple application of pressure through the medium of a craft knife, we can split the ribs on all of these models, meaning that we have the ability to mix and match all of the arms and breastbones together, giving us a nice large range of combat weapon and guns. Then, with the modifications made, we can take them outside and give them a nice quick prime. Now, as I said earlier, I'm aware that these changes that we made are not essentially WYSIWYG, and if I took it to HQ, GW, something like that, there may be some objections, because none of the datasheets or war scrolls feature a Tzaangor holding both a fantasy melee weapon as well as a chainsword, for example. However, in real life, when I'm playing with friends at local hobby store or something similar to that, if I'm using this as a combat patrol, it's a moot point, because all the Tzaangors are armed with exactly the same weaponry, meaning that it doesn't matter what they're armed with on the models, we know in the rules they've all got the same weaponry. Therefore, I would much rather just have a unit with a lot of variety that looks quite cool, as opposed to a very set binary choice of arms and body parts, which we are left if we're making them all 40k. But anyway, tangent over, let's get these guys out and get them primed. The prime we're going to be using here is a zenithal, but rather than the typical black as the first layer of spray giving us some nice dark shadows, we're going to be swapping that out for some red, following it up with the white from above. Once our prime is dry, we can then move on to a little bit of brushwork. And here what we're going to do is thin down a little bit of red and then apply this around the feet on all of the models. This will give us a nice little bit of color changing in this area later on, and then we can move on once the feet are red and are dry. What we're going to do is dig out some medium dry brushes and a light flesh, and then work around all of the models using this light flesh tone, catching all of the raised areas that are in the red shadow areas. So anything with the red prime still showing, we'll get a nice skin dry brush, picking out all of those raised details in these shadow areas. Once we've tackled and dry brushed all of these shadow areas with the skin, it's then time to come in and tackle the skin as a whole. And here what we're going to be doing is using a tealy turquoise colour. Now we could use a contrast for this directly off of the shelf from somewhere like Army Paint or Games Workshop, something like that. Alternatively, we could do what we're doing here and taking a normal turquoisey paint and then diluting it with contrast to use on our skin. And this has a few advantages. First off, we will be using a layer paint and then diluting it with contrast, which means that we still have a thicker prime color to go back to that will be the same color as our contrast. So if we need to touch up or brighten up any areas in the paint job, we can use a thicker medium and dilute it slightly less, giving us a lot more options when applying this particular color. The second option and benefit of doing this is that we've already painted some of the models in this army. We've painted up the Terminators and the leader already, and this turquoise was used for these models. So by using the same color, we're going to get some nice consistency and coherency across the entire army. And as a third benefit for me, just because you've subscribed, I'm going to let you know this. And that benefit is that I actually have this color, and I don't have a contrast version of this color, so I don't need to go out and buy one because I've got contrast medium. So by using these together, we save time, we save money, and that one is just for you. let's move on and carry on with the painting. We can start to tackle the skin with either our contrast or contrast mix by starting to slap this all over the skin, making sure that we mop up any excessive areas of pooling. Because of the way that we've done the prime, you'll notice that the white most raised areas will be tinted less, but overall show brighter because of the white undercoat, while the rest of the area's recesses and shadows will collect slightly more of the color pigment from the overall contrast, and then that will shift those red areas into a nicer tonal purple. Once the first round of contrast is down, what we can do is add some quick definition because we want to paint these models relatively quickly. There is 20 after all, and we can manage this by the application of a blue wash. And this will act very similar to the last contrast, but will overall reinforce the shadows and sculpted details more so than the contrast. As you might be aware, when we apply a wash to a model, it does a really nice job at picking out all of the recessed details and all of the sculpted bits that are on the model. However, it also very strongly darkens down any of the previous colors that we've applied. So our nice bright tealy turquoise has now been dulled down by the wash that we've applied. And isn't it convenient that we have the same contrast color that we used, except not in contrast form? Because now what we can do is slightly dilute this with water rather than contrast, and come in and build up a couple of quick layers on a few passes just to give us a bright punch of color across the skin and bring it back to that turquoisey brightness, while leaving nice deep shadow colors in all of the recesses. We can take our paint thinned with water and then quickly, as I said, build up the tone on the brightest, most prominent raised areas. When doing this, we are going to be focusing mainly on the body and the head, as these are the areas that will garner the most attention. Just remember, where we tinted the legs, we're going to be avoiding with this blue because we want them to be showing as purple. So we're not going to be highlighting them on this pass. Instead, once we've highlighted all of the blue skin areas, what we're going to do is mix a small amount of red into our initial turquoise color, and then slightly lighten it up and warm it up by adding in a small drop of medium flesh. This will turn it into a nice slightly purple tinted highlight for all of our leg sections, and then we can just highlight these similar to the rest of the skin areas, targeting the areas of most light hit and following the essentially purple tint given away by our previous wash stages as a guide as to where to stop applying the purple highlights. At this point, for a personal tabletop army that I'm expecting to have this unit shot off the board quite quickly, there's a large amount of them and they're relatively disposable. I'm happy to actually leave the skin just at this as the highest highlight, which will tie it in nicely with the rest of the army that we've also got this color involved with. However, if we're aiming to take it to a tournament and we want to win best painted or something like that, naturally we could push it a little bit brighter, maybe adding in some skin tone to this mix, and then spending a little bit more time layering up and blending up to get a nice transition. But for a, as I said, standard tabletop army for personal use, I'm happy to leave it here. And then we can move on to some of the more erroneous areas. So we've got the weird hair tentacles and the feathers and all of those fun details that are kind of part of the body, but we're not painting as blue skin. And we're going to be tackling them in a nice fun manner using predominantly overbrushing and dry brushing. We can start off these erroneous areas by taking the turquoise we used for the predominant areas of skin and then mixing in some medium skin tone to give us a brighter desaturated blue, which can then be overbrushed across all of these chosen areas, which gives us a nice starting point, which can then be followed up by just essentially some pure mid skin tone. And again, we will be overbrushing this over the same areas, except on this second pass, we want to essentially target from halfway up the area, pulling away to the end. This can then be finished off in the same manner by picking out the brightest details and the very edges using a light flesh. This will give us a nice transition from the initial blue skin tone through up to almost a bright white highlight. Then we're going to finish off all of this work with a little bit of tinting, and we're going to do that with a nice simple sepia wash. and this will have a nice benefit of picking out all the details while tinting the work we've done so far. Once the sepia wash is dry, we end up with a really nice transition on the hair and the feathers and things like that. It goes from the blue base skin tone through to a nice transitional yellow going through a green shade, which for Tzeentch and the changing matter and changing nature, I really like this effect, and it's really quick to do on all of the extra appendages. But then what we need to do is tackle the rest of the areas which are predominantly the metals. And we're going to be using some contrasts to kick us off here. We're going to be picking a couple of different areas and kind of theming them out based on whether they're plate metal or some sort of other accessory or something like that. And the two contrasts we're going to be using is a black contrast and a brown contrast. And we just need to make sure not to flood any areas, and we can get to work. Generally, across the models, we opted to have all of the main armor panels and armor plates base coated in black, while all of the accessories, so the chains, the mail, and things like the bones, all got coated in a brown contrast. Once all the contrast is applied and has subsequently dried, what we're going to do is come in with some dark gold and start to use this across the models. All of the solid panels which got a complete coverage of black contrast are going to get another complete coat, this time of this metallic. We're going to be picking out all of the areas of metal, giving us a nice complete base coat of metal. Then we can move to the areas that have been coated in brown, and these are going to get a combination of dry brushing and overbrushing. This will mean that we keep the non-metallic brown in most of the recesses, but give the model a bright metallic sheen on a lot of the edges. Then what we're going to do is dull down all of these areas and add a little bit of aging by slapping a purple wash over all of the areas of metal, regardless of their initial base coat color. Naturally, making sure to mop up any of the heaviest areas of pooling. I really like the effect that you get from using a purple wash over a bronzy goldy tone. It gives it a really nice aged looking patina. But as you'll know, when we apply washes over things like metallics, we tend to lose a lot of the sheen because we've now got something occluding the actual reflective nature of the metallic. So we're going to solve that really simply by taking the same tone, the same metallic color, and then going around and doing a combination of quick edge highlights as well as some overbrushing and dry brushing for a little bit of speed. So yes, essentially here we're using the good old Games Workshop painting technique of base, wash and highlight. And that's fine for these, there's lots of them and the metallics aren't the main key area. So we can work around and do that quite efficiently and quite quickly. When applying these highlights, we can vary the method depending on the area and the time that we want to spend. Generally, we're looking at strong edge highlights on all of the main panels, giving us more control over the bright spots, while some of the smaller, more textured areas can simply be highlighted with a nice overbrush or dry brush, as it's not worth edge highlighting every single scale on a section of chainmail. That essentially is all of the metals done and the subscribe button smashed. We can tackle the last large sections of bones across all of the models. Primarily here we're looking at the horns as well as their baby skulls which are attached across the waist of the models. Here we're going to be applying a base coat of brown contrast which we did at the same time as the metals, and then following this up by mixing in that contrast with a light brown and applying this as a highlight to all of the raised areas. Then what we can do is take some pure light brown and apply this to the most prominent edges and sections, bringing out the brightness of those areas before slapping it black down with a brown wash over all of the horns and bones, giving us some nice texture and helping us blend some of those sharper transitions of colors. When we're going around and doing all of the bones and beaks and things like that, it's worth remembering that we also need to do the feet. And I painted them in the same method, with the brown contrast and then layering up through the brown and then slapping a brown wash over it. And that is how they look afterwards. As you can see, I think they look relatively good for the quick turnaround that we've got for them, though I appreciate that possibly converting a lot of the models in the largest unit in the box was not possibly the best idea, but I equally didn't really want 20 guys that all looked like carbon copies of just 5 guys in various different positions. So I've got a lot of variety here and I really enjoy it. And because of the way we've painted it, hopefully you can see from these photos that they tie in really nice and fit with the other models we've painted for the Thousand Suns. Do let me know what you think on how we've tied them in, because obviously we painted them in different ways. But beyond that, I really like how these guys came out. And what I would suggest is, if you liked how this came out, why not check out another video? Rather than a Combat Patrol video or a Thousand Suns video, if you haven't checked them out, do it. But what I can offer you right now is this link here, which takes you to a fun video where we made Mario into a Space Marine. It's a little bit different to this one, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Otherwise, do remember to subscribe so that we can see you next time.